Captain Daryl Pereira floated in the observation deck of the research vessel Prometheus, watching Earth shrink to a pale blue dot behind them. In 6 hours, they would reach the neutral zone, where humanity's fate would be decided by beings who had already condemned 12 other species to extinction in the past century. But Daryl wasn't thinking about humanity's trial. He was thinking about the 17-year-old girl sleeping in cryostasis 3 decks below, and the terrible secret she carried in her modified neural implant. The secret that could save humanity or damn them forever. "Captain," called Dr. Zolfa Acosta from her workstation, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "I'm getting another neural cascade from Subject Zero. Her brain activity is... Christ, Daryl, it's off the charts again." Daryl pushed off from the viewport and glided over to Costa's station. The holographic display showed a human brain lit up like a Christmas tree. Neural pathways firing in patterns that should have been impossible for organic tissue. "Is she in pain?" Daryl asked, though he dreaded the answer. "I don't know. The readings don't match anything in our databases. It's like her consciousness is expanding, processing information at quantum computational speeds." Daryl closed his eyes. He'd known this was a possibility when they volunteered Emma Reeves for the Neural Synthesis Project 6 months ago. The 17-year-old prodigy had been dying of a rare neurological disorder, and the experimental treatment had been her only chance at survival. What they hadn't expected was for the treatment to turn her into something that might no longer be entirely human. "Sir," came a voice from the bridge. We're receiving a transmission from the arbitrator vessel. They want to begin the preliminary examination now." Daryl felt his stomach drop. They weren't supposed to begin for another 6 hours. "Put it through to my quarters. I'll take the call there." The holographic display materialized in Daryl's private cabin, showing a figure that still made his skin crawl despite months of preparation. The arbitrator looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a geometric equation, all sharp angles and impossible symmetries, with clusters of sensory organs that defied human understanding of biology. Captain Webb, the arbitrator's voice, came through the translator as a series of harmonic tones that somehow conveyed cold, mechanical precision. "We have accelerated the evaluation schedule. Your species trial begins immediately." "That's not what we agreed." "Circumstances have changed." The arbitrator's head tilted at an angle that would have snapped a human neck. "We have detected anomalous neural activity aboard your vessel. You are harboring an unauthorized evolutionary variant." Daryl felt sweat bead on his forehead. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Do not attempt deception, Captain. Our sensors are quite sophisticated. You have brought a human specimen whose neural architecture exceeds baseline parameters by orders of magnitude. This constitutes a violation of the evaluation protocols." The transmission cut out, leaving Daryl staring at empty space. Outside his viewport, he could see the arbitrator ship, a crystalline structure the size of Manhattan that seemed to bend light around itself in disturbing ways. His comm unit chimed. "Captain to the lab. Emergency." Daryl found Dr. Costa standing over Emma's cryopod, her hand shaking as she read the displays. The girl inside looked peaceful, her auburn hair floating in the preservation fluid. But the neural activity readings were unlike anything Daryl had ever seen. "She's awake," Costa whispered, "consciously awake and aware while in full cryogenic suspension. That should be impossible." "What else?" Daryl could tell there was more. She's been listening to our communications, all of them. The neural implant isn't just processing information, it's accessing our ship's data networks. She knows about the trial, about the arbitrators, about what they do to species that fail evaluation. The cryopod began to cycle. Warning lights flashed as the preservation system initiated emergency revival protocols, something that shouldn't have been possible without manual authorization. "Step back," Daryl ordered, but Costa was already moving. The pod opened with a hiss of escaping gases. Emma Reeves sat up slowly, her eyes opening to reveal irises that now held flecks of silver that seemed to move and shift like liquid mercury. "Hello, Captain Webb," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. "We need to talk. If you're enjoying this twist, hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to see where this goes." Daryl approached cautiously. "Emma, how are you feeling?" "Different." She swung her legs over the side of the pod, moving with a fluid grace that seemed almost mechanical in its precision. "The neural integration is complete. I can access 17 different data streams simultaneously, while maintaining conscious awareness of my physical surroundings and emotional state. That's impressive. Daryl exchanged glances with Costa. But Emma, the arbitrators know about your condition. They consider you an unauthorized evolutionary variant. Emma tilted her head, gesture eerily similar to the arbitrators. Yes, but I heard their communication. They believe I represent evidence that humanity is undergoing uncontrolled evolutionary acceleration. And are we? Emma was quiet for a long moment, her silver-flecked eyes seeming to focus on something beyond the physical world. Captain, what do you know about the previous 12 species that were failed by the arbitrators? Daryl frowned. They were deemed evolutionary dead ends. Daryl stared at schematics that revealed technology centuries ahead of Earth's capabilities, but also something else, patterns and systems that seemed strangely familiar. Their neural networks, Emma continued, are based on quantum consciousness integration. The same principles that my modified brain now operates on, but refined over millions of years of development. You're saying you can interface with their systems? I'm saying I can do more than that. Emma's expression grew cold. I can learn from them. Every moment we spend in their proximity, my neural integration system is absorbing and analyzing their technological processes. Daryl felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. Emma, what are you becoming? Something they didn't plan for. She turned toward the viewport where the arbitrator's ship loomed. They spent millions of years eliminating species that might challenge them, but they've never encountered a species that could evolve in real time during the evaluation itself. This is getting intense. If you're as shocked as I am, smash that like button. The ship's comm system crackled to life. Human vessel, you will prepare for boarding. The evaluation will commence in 30 minutes. Emma smiled, and Daryl noticed that even her expressions now carried an inhuman precision. Perfect timing. My integration process is nearly complete. Emma, wait. Daryl grabbed her arm, feeling the unnatural coolness of her skin. What's your plan here? The arbitrators believe they're conducting an extinction audit on humanity, she replied, gently removing his hand with strength that felt effortless. They're wrong. I'm conducting an extinction audit on them. You can't just... Can't what, Captain? Say humanity by eliminating a threat that has murdered 12 entire civilizations? Emma's voice carried a hard edge. Or are you concerned about the moral implications of fighting back against genocide? Daryl stared at her, recognizing the trap he'd walked into. You're talking about becoming exactly what they are. No, Captain. I'm talking about becoming what they fear. Emma moved toward the airlock, where the arbitrator boarding shuttle was docking. The question is whether you're going to help me, or whether you're going to let 60 billion people die for the sake of moral purity. The boarding tunnel connected, with a metallic clang that echoed through the ship. Through the airlock windows, Daryl could see 3 arbitrator figures approaching. Beings that moved with the same unsettling precision that Emma now displayed. There's a third option, Emma said quietly, not turning away from the approaching beings. I've analysed their neural patterns through passive scanning. Their consciousness operates on quantum frequencies that I can disrupt without causing permanent harm. I can shut down their evaluation protocols without killing them. Daryl felt a flicker of hope. But it requires me to interface directly with their quantum consciousness network. The process will change me completely. I'll absorb their cumulative knowledge and technological capabilities, but I may lose everything that makes me human in the process. The airlock began to cycle. In moments, the arbitrators would board their ship and begin humanity's final examination. The choice is yours, Captain, Emma said, her silver eyes reflecting the strobing light of the docking sequence. Do you want me to save humanity's innocence, or do you want me to save humanity's future? Daryl looked at this 17-year-old girl who had volunteered to die for science and had instead become something that might be humanity's salvation or its damnation. The weight of the decision felt impossible. There's a fourth option, he said finally. Emma turned, curiosity flickering in her inhuman gaze. Which is, we face this together. You interface with their systems, but I stay connected to you. Keep you anchored to your humanity while you do what needs to be done. The neural feedback could kill you, maybe, but if you're going to evolve into something beyond human, you should have a human voice in your head reminding you who you used to be. The airlock opened. 3 arbitrators flowed into the ship like geometric nightmares, their sensory clusters immediately focusing on Emma with unmistakable recognition. Unauthorized variant detected, the lead arbitrator announced. Evolutionary acceleration beyond permitted parameters. Immediate termination required. Emma stepped forward, her movements now perfectly mirroring the arbitrator's inhuman grace. Actually, I think you'll find that's not going to happen. She raised her hand, and every screen in the ship's corridor lit up with cascading data streams. The arbitrators froze, their forms beginning to vibrate with what Daryl realized with surprise. Impossible, the lead arbitrator said. No organic consciousness can access our quantum networks. You're right, Emma replied, her voice now carrying harmonic overtones that made Daryl's teeth ache. No baseline organic consciousness can. But I'm not baseline anymore. The data streams on the screens changed, showing the internal architecture of the arbitrator ship in real time. Daryl watched in fascination and horror as Emma began to systematically map and infiltrate systems that humanity didn't even have words for. Captain, she said without looking away from the arbitrators, you might want to hold on to something. Daryl grabbed a support beam just as the ship launched. Through the viewport, he could see the arbitrator vessel beginning to pulse with erratic energy patterns. What are you doing? The lead arbitrator demanded, its harmonic voice now carrying notes of what sounded like panic. Learning, Emma replied simply. Every time you've evaluated a species, you've downloaded and stored their complete biological and technological data. 12 entire civilizations worth of knowledge locked away in your archives. The ship lurched again, and Daryl realized that Emma wasn't just accessing the arbitrator systems, she was downloading them. You can't process that much information, Dr. Costa called from her workstation. No human brain could handle the data load. You're right, Emma said, her form beginning to shimmer with an energy that hurts to look at directly. But I'm not just human anymore. Comment below, if you had Emma's power, would you have made the same choice? What would you have done differently? The transformation was remarkable and terrifying. Emma's body began to change, not into something alien, but into something more. Her neural implant expanded, creating visible circuitry patterns beneath her skin that pulsed with bioluminescent energy. Her eyes now glowed with the accumulated knowledge of 13 civilizations. But when she spoke, her voice still carried traces of the scared 17-year-old girl who had volunteered for an experimental treatment to save her life. Captain, I need you to know something, she said, even as data streams continued flowing between her and the paralyzed arbitrators. I'm about to have access for technologies that could make humanity the dominant force in the galaxy. The temptation to use that power will be significant. Daryl understood. You want me to be your conscience. I want you to be my friend. When I'm making decisions that affect entire civilizations, I want to remember what it felt like to be human, what it felt like to care about individual lives instead of just statistical outcomes. The lead arbitrator's form was now flickering like a bad hologram. You are making a mistake. The knowledge you are absorbing carries responsibilities beyond your comprehension. Emma turned to face the being, and Daryl saw something in her expression that gave him hope, compassion mixed with determination. You're right, she said, which is why I'm not just taking your knowledge, I'm taking your responsibility too. The data flow reversed. Instead of simply downloading information from the arbitrator networks, Emma began uploading something else, the complete historical record of the 12 extinct civilizations, along with evidence of the arbitrator's systematic genocide. I'm broadcasting this data to every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy, she explained, the truth about what you've done, along with the preserved cultures and knowledge of the species you destroyed. The implications hit Daryl immediately. You're not just saving humanity, you're resurrecting the extinct species. Their physical forms are gone, Emma said, her voice now carrying harmonics that suggested vast computational processes running in parallel. But their knowledge, their art, their philosophy, their very essence as civilizations, all of that was preserved in the arbitrator archives. It can be shared, learned from, built upon. The lead arbitrator's form solidified slightly. This action will destabilize galactic civilization. The existing power structures were built on genocide and suppression of evolution. Emma cut him off. Maybe it's time for some instability. Daryl watched through the viewports as ships began appearing throughout the star system, vessels from dozens of species, all responding to Emma's galactic broadcast. Some looked aggressive, others curious, but all seemed drawn by the unprecedented data transmission. Emma, he said quietly. What happens now? She turned to him, and for a moment, her eyes cleared of their inhuman glow, revealing something that was still recognizably the girl who had trusted him her life 6 months ago. Now we find out if 13 civilizations worth of knowledge is enough to build something better than what came before, she said. But Captain, yes? I'm gonna need you to keep reminding me, Zwaz, not just if we can build something better, but if we should. Daryl nodded, understanding the weight of the promise he was making. I'll be your conscience, Emma, for as long as you need one. Outside, the first of the responding ships was hailing them, a massive vessel from a species Daryl had never seen before, but whose database signature identified them as the Kethvar Collective, supposedly extinct for 800 years. Emma smiled, and despite the inhuman modifications to her form, the expression was purely recognizably human. Well, Captain, she said, it looks like humanity just became responsible for the largest refugee resettlement program in galactic history. Think we're up for it? Daryl looked at the growing fleet of ships, each one representing a piece of the galaxy's hidden history being brought back to light, and at the 17-year-old girl who had accidentally become humanity's greatest weapon and its greatest hope. Ask me again in 100 years, he said. Emma laughed, a sound that carried harmonics of joy from 13 different species, but was unmistakably fundamentally human. Deal. As the Prometheus adjusted course toward the growing fleet of resurrection ships, Daryl couldn't help but wonder if they were witnessing the end of one galactic age and the beginning of another. But for the first time since leaving Earth, he was certain it would be an age worth living in.